Have you seen some of these headlines lately about the housing market? So much of what the media puts out there is all about fear, and it's all the doom and gloom that so many people love to buy into. However, I don't necessarily believe everything the media puts out. I think it's evident over the last several years. They've been wrong numerous times, especially when it comes to the housing market. You can see here in past years, the media has been wrong numerous times since 2015 about the housing market, talking about that there was a bubble bigger than 2006. Then in 2016, they're saying that they're in a new housing bubble. 2017, homeownership doesn't build wealth, and it is better to rent than to buy in today's housing market. You can see over the last 7 years, the media has constantly put out fear. They've constantly put out information to get you as a potential home buyer to continue to sit on the sidelines. You can also look at that chart that shows that if you were to have bought a house back in 2015 for $300,000 and you would have rode it out for the last 6+ years, you would have made over $200,000 of equity in that one property. This is the power of owning real estate, and this is the power of playing the long game. And I know some of you don't want to buy because maybe you plan on selling in a year or two. You're right. You may not be in a position to buy, and it might be better to wait. However, for most of you that are watching this video, your game plan is to live in this house that you would essentially purchase. You're going to be in there for the next 5, maybe 10 years. So if that's the case, look at these opportunities that are coming to your footstep every single day, but you're choosing not to look at them because of headlines like you can see here in this article and some of these other articles that I found that basically talk about, are we at the bottom of the market? Home sales are melting. The bubble's going to pop. Whatever you can think of, you can find it. You could literally Google that, and I bet you'd find a news article that talks about whatever you're thinking about. Now, it doesn't mean that it's true. However, what you need to do is read through the fine print. You actually need to read the article and understand what they're talking about, because a lot of times what I've been seeing is that these publications will put out crazy headlines that the market's going to collapse and these crazy things are going to happen. But when you actually read what's in the article, they always say that the information is not as bad as it seems. And that's the point of me doing this video today. I really want to talk about that what you are seeing in the news and in the media, for the most part, they're probably lying to you. Now, I know some of you are going to hate this video and you're going to think that I'm just doing this because I'm in the mortgage business and I need you to buy a house. And I'm going to say this again and again in all my videos. I do not care what you do. I do these videos to help you understand what I'm seeing at the ground level, because my team is ranked in the top 1% in the entire country of what we do, and that's helping homeowners get into homes. We help hundreds of people every single year get into homes, and so many of our clients are being successful with their purchases. And for those of you that have been following me long enough or follow me on Instagram and some of my other social media channels, I always share these wins. I'm always transparent about the things that we're doing and the success that we are seeing. So I'm not one to believe in the doom and gloom. However, I'm not ignorant to what the media puts out or what a lot of you might be thinking or feeling. So let's talk about that. In fact, drop your comments below. What do you think about the market? Maybe what's holding you back? And if you've bought in the last year, tell me about your success. I would love to hear about your wins, because this is the stuff that more people need to understand, that there are more wins out there than more people losing. Now, one of the things I want to share is that when people talk about a housing crash, a housing bust, you have to have inventory for that to happen. I've always asked that question. So many of you that have even commented and hated on some of my videos, I've asked you, where is all this inventory going to come from? Because as we've seen interest rates go up, that has slowed the market down. It hasn't crashed the market. We've seen unsustainable growth over the last several years. So even if your market pulled back 10% in your area, that probably brings you back maybe a year, maybe even 2 years to maybe 2019 prices. So it's not necessarily a crash where some of you are expecting to see 2011 prices all over again, which that will never happen. And I've said this before, even if that were to happen, the average person that's wanting that to happen, I would almost bet that you won't even have a job at that point. So the fact that you don't have a job to buy a house and you have no money, you're going to put yourself in a worse off position than where you are today. Having some of these other economic conditions come into play because you want a housing crash, the average person is going to lose because that happened back in 2011. And you want to know who got rich? Real estate investors, guys that had money, and Wall Street. Unless you guys continue to want the big guys to keep winning, I wouldn't necessarily pray or hope for a crash because you're probably going to lose. And you can see here on this chart, this literally shows you that today's inventory is almost 900,000 active listings below the lowest level of the 4-year decade average between 2 million and 2.5 million. Think about that. 900, almost a million active homes on the market below the lowest level we've ever seen in the last 40 years. This is basic supply and demand. Without inventory, how can you have a crash? You need an influx of homes and a massive influx in order for prices to adjust. And because interest rates have climbed so fast this year, all it's done is prohibited those potential and would-be sellers from selling their homes because they either purchased or refinanced, and they probably have a 2 or 3% interest rate. So it makes absolutely no sense for that person to sell their house unless they absolutely need to sell in order to buy a home today to take on a 6 or 7% interest rate. I'm one of those people. I refinanced my house last year. I have a 2.5% interest rate. My house has probably close to $300,000 of equity in it. I could probably sell it, go buy a dream home. I could probably go buy more rental properties, but I'm not dying to go do that today. And there's so many other people in the same position where they're not dying to go deal with the 7% rate. I can wait. I can wait it out. But that house that maybe I would have sold doesn't go on the market, which means there's one less house for sale. So even though that there aren't as many buyers on the marketplace, there still aren't as many homes that we typically would have seen. And another thing that reminds me of the 2008 crash was the number of people that were going through foreclosure or bankruptcy. And you can see here on this chart, we are also at an all-time low. And you compare that to what happened in 2008, 2009, tons of foreclosures, tons of bankruptcies, and you can see this number where we are today. It's significantly lower. Now, could this change? Absolutely. This could definitely change because, again, if inflation were to somehow take a turn because the government continues to print money and businesses aren't still recovering, they will tend to lay people off. And who's going to get laid off? Like I mentioned, probably the average Joe person gets laid off. Maybe some higher end positions get consolidated, but those are the guys that will always land on their feet and they're going to find somewhere else to work. I remember during the crash, it was very difficult to find employment. You had people that had MBAs, doctorates that were getting fired that could not get a job anywhere. And again, if you don't have a higher education, it's going to make it that much harder for you to then get a job. Having a massive pullback would be one of the last things we would want because, again, if you're an average person making $50,000 to $70,000 a year, the likelihood of you keeping your job, in my opinion, is slim to none. Then, if there's a massive amount of people that are trying to get jobs, it's going to make it that much harder to then find something. So you're going to have to either move to another part of the country or you're going to have to take something that's paying you even less. And even thinking about this foreclosure and bankruptcy situation, remember, nearly 38% of all homeowners out there own their homes without a mortgage. This is another issue that is essentially led to the downfall of the market, is that everyone that bought homes during the crash that led up to 2008 had a mortgage. Everyone was over leveraged. Everyone bought a house and they put no money down. You put 3% down. But because of all the regulation that then came into play post-crash, everyone had to qualify for the mortgage. All of these stated income loans went out the door. You had to truly qualify for the mortgage that you're in. And more importantly, buyers were paying cash for their home. I remember post-crash, nearly 60% of all the transactions that were happening in Las Vegas were going to cash buyers, whether that was an individual buyer or whether that was an institutional buyer that had billions of dollars that they were buying up homes, which, let me remind you, that is also happening again today. I just had lunch with one of my top real estate agents. He put his house on the market. It's been there for maybe 3 weeks. He hasn't seen too many offers yet. However, just out of the blue, he had 5 cash offers. 2 from people that flip houses, 3 that came from institutional buyers. So let me remind you again, for those of you that are on the sidelines thinking you're going to time the market, you're going to outsmart every single realtor, every single hedge fund out there, you're going to lose because the cash buyers are back. They're in certain markets more than others, and they have an unlimited checkbook that will buy the house that you should be living in which will then turn you into a renter that they then control the rent. And in certain states where they have no rent control, they then control how they can price their rental prices. And in Las Vegas, we have no rent control. And we've seen a massive spike in rents going up over the last couple of years simply because more and more of these institutional buyers are controlling the inventory out there, and they can raise the rent simply because they control that and they can do it. So being that so many homeowners own their homes without a mortgage, again, where would that inventory come from? If all I have to worry about is paying my property taxes and my insurance, worst comes to worst, and let's just say I get laid off, I can't get a job, but I own my house free and clear, I would sell my house. I would sell my house and I would be totally okay. So again, those homes may not flood the market because they're not going to be in a dire situation that they're going to foreclose and the house is going to go back to the bank. Now, they may sell it to a house flipper. They may take a haircut because a company like Open Door or some of these other iBuyers may be able to write them a check. But again, the cash buyer reigns supreme, because if you were the seller, would you want $500,000 in 7 days, or would you want $500,000 in 30 to 45 days? You're going to take the 7-day option. Let's just face it. You can't argue that, because look at what happened in the last couple of years. All of these home sellers went for top dollar. They didn't care about your story that you want to raise your kids in this house. They wanted top dollar. That's all they wanted. So if we're in a position that nearly 40% of homeowners have no mortgage, and then a massive amount of people that do own have either a 2, 3, maybe 4% interest rate, there is no need for them to sell. They're not in a bad spot. So again, all this inventory that maybe would have hit the market in years past aren't going to hit the market, which then keeps supply at a lower amount. And if interest rates are where they're at and you as a buyer do not like a 6 or 7%, or maybe you just can't qualify for what you want, you're going to continue to sit on the sidelines, which again, you would have normally been in the market, which now we still have competition. And this is why even on some properties, you are seeing multiple offers, just like I told you about the story about one of my top realtors. And here's another article that talks about that the housing market is melting nationally. Again, fear mongering. When you actually dive through this article, you can see that they're even accounting for that 26% of transactions were cash buyers in the month of November. So think about that. Literally, 1 out of 5 buyers out there was willing to pay cash for their house. This is the stuff that scares me, because if 1 out of 5 buyers has the ability to pay $400,000 for a house, how many more buyers are there like this out there? We're seeing it month after month. And this number, in my opinion, will only get bigger if we start to see home prices drop even further, which again, I ask you the question, if you're waiting on the sidelines, what are you waiting for? If you then have to compete with the 70 other % of people that are trying to finance, if you're the seller and you get 5 offers on your house, you're probably going to go with the guy who's going to pay you the most amount of money or can close the fastest. Do they want to deal with someone who's getting a loan? Most often, they don't want to deal with that, because they want to get paid as fast as they can. And not only does the seller want to get paid as fast as they can, so does the real estate agent. So sitting on the sidelines, in my opinion, doesn't necessarily make a ton of sense. However, if that's your only option right now, you have to put yourself into a better position. Whether that's getting a second job, getting a side hustle, paying off your bad debt, working on learning new skills so that way you can get a raise at work, you can make more money. These are the only things that you can control. All these other things that I'm talking about today is out of your control. The market's going to do whatever the market wants to do. So we need to focus on ourselves. We need to see how can we make more money? How can we get rid of more debt? So that way when the market turns, and let's just say home prices come down another 10 or 20, 30%, you are in a position to win. Because if you're on the sidelines and you think that $5,000 that you have saved up, and you know what, you probably worked really hard to save that up, is going to be the difference in you getting a house. I'm going to tell you again, if the market turns, that is not going to be the difference maker to get you into a house. You have to start planning now. If 2023 is the year for you to buy a house, whether it's 6 months out, 9 months out, a year out, start planning today. Planning today, get that budget in order, talk to a loan officer, talk to a real estate agent, so that way you know exactly what you need to do to get there. I always equate this as if you were driving somewhere that you've never been before. Could you get there just by dumb luck? Yeah, you might eventually get there. It's going to probably take you forever. But if you had your GPS on that told you exactly where to turn, what exit to get off at, you would get to your destination at that given time. So if you don't know what it takes to buy a house because you've never done it before, or maybe you did it 10 years ago and you don't know what the process is like today, why would you not talk to a loan officer, or why would you not talk to a real estate agent and have them be your GPS to get you to your destination? It blows my mind that people will wait till the last minute to decide to buy a house. This is the biggest decision you're going to make typically in your life. We're not going out to the car dealership to buy a car and spend $20,000. You are literally spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. Take the time to create a plan, create a budget, so that way you can weed out all the noise that the media is putting out there, get rid of all the fear mongering, know the facts, know the real story, and be a winner in the market. Because I truly believe with the right plan, with the right strategy, you can make that happen. And if you want to get started, send me an email. I'd be happy to come up with a custom plan to get you in a position to buy. And there's links in my description to walk you through the entire process from start to finish if you want to download my free PDF. Thanks for watching. Share this with one of your friends, and I'd see you on the next video.